The BBC understands MPs will debate on Wednesday whether to launch airstrikes in Syria against so-called Islamic State. Labour MPs will be able to vote how they wish after the party leader, Jeremy Corbyn, who opposes military action, decided against compelling his colleagues to follow his lead. It brings the prospect of UK airstrikes a significant step closer. Our political editor, Laura Koonsberg, has more.
Have you changed your position on airstrikes?
Get in the car.
Maybe it was never going to be a very good day.
Mr Corbyn, will you allow your MPs a free vote?
You're actually very rude the way you behave.
He started the morning trying to persuade his top team that Labour should argue against the airstrikes in Syria. Jeremy Corbyn was chosen overwhelmingly by the party's members, in part because he's opposed military action over the years, almost an article of faith. Corbyn's hope of compromise was to let his MPs and shadow cabinet vote for airstrikes if they wanted to, but at the same time convince them that Labour as a party should formally oppose the war. Puzzled? Some of his MPs were.
I'm a little confused, which is, I'm afraid to say, not a new thing over the last couple of weeks.
Inside, they talked and talked. Outside, we waited and waited. Meanwhile, the government was continuing with its effort to get Labour MPs on board.
We went to see the Secretary of State for Defence to have a private briefing, a confidential briefing, just to hear some of the evidence and the facts pertaining to this issue. I think it was really important, and I'd encourage all members of Parliament to do that if they have the opportunity.
This was always going to be hard for the Labour Party because it has a very basic dilemma. Its leader, Jeremy Corbyn, and many of its members are fundamentally against the idea of airstrikes in Syria. But a significant chunk of the party's MPs think it is a good idea. But for nearly 2 hours now, the party's senior team have been meeting, trying to hammer out a way through, a compromise. But the only thing that's clear, suggests whispers from inside the room, is just how confused the party's position really is.
Yet Jeremy Corbyn's clear and historic position on military intervention is what's inspired many members.
As it stands, David Cameron's plans for airstrikes aren't feasible and they're not the right way to tackle the problem we're seeing, and they are a little bit reactionary.
I think he's done a good job so far. I think people need to give him time.
I think it was always likely that Jeremy was going to vote in this way, and I don't think it's an issue that he has, as an individual MP, has said his position on airstrikes.
After more than 2 hours of wrangling, it was decided Labour will not officially oppose RAF jets bombing over Syria as well as Iraq. Mr Corbyn backed down, and his party will be allowed to vote as they wish.
I actually have more in common with the Tory chair of the Defence Select Committee today than I may do with some of my Labour colleagues. But I do think that these things do cross party boundaries, and I think that that's fair enough.
Don't bomb Syria!
Dozens of Labour MPs are now likely to back the government in its bid to expand the fight against so-called Islamic State. But like in Glasgow tonight, opposition in Westminster is deeply held and will remain.
Laura, David Cameron is expected to make a statement on Syria later this evening, but the BBC understands now that there will be a debate, or there's very likely to be a debate, and it'll be on Wednesday.
Well, Fiona, that certainly seems very likely this evening. The Prime Minister is going to make a statement at 8 o'clock, and the most likely option is that he is going to push the button on some kind of timetable for a debate and then a vote, not confirmed to be on Wednesday, but a vote to expand military action in Syria. Now, for many months, he has believed that this is the right thing to do, but clearly the decision that now Labour MPs will be allowed to vote with the government has put one of the final jigsaw pieces in place. There is significant opposition still in the Labour Party. Jeremy Corbyn will vote against this military action. There's some opposition too inside the Conservative Party, opposition also inside the Scottish National Party and the Liberal Democrats. But that is why this decision that Labour MPs will be able to back strikes into Syria was so crucial for the government, because simply there was no question that David Cameron would even test the idea in the House of Commons without being confident that a significant chunk of Labour MPs will come on side. Now that does appear to be the case with this struggle to a decision by the Labour Party today. It appears that in the next couple of hours the government might set out a timetable for bombing.
Laura Koonsberg at Westminster, thank you.